Is it me? But oh, my voice seems deeper today. I don't mind me. Let me first start by congratulating you for tuning in to the Real Estate Money Podcast. This is our first episode this season, and I am your host, AGK Dominic Odo. I think I should start by giving a more like a background to who I am and why you should be listening to me. So my name is Dominic AGK. I am an estate surveyor and valuer with over 7+ years experience in the Nigerian real estate market. I'm a graduate of the University of Nigeria. I studied estate management for a couple of years. And then after graduation, I moved over to Lagos where I started my practice. And I've also remained. That's not to say that I've not traveled to, I've practiced in more like just go to get data for, so I've done jobs in virtually all country, all states in Nigeria. So that's a brief rundown of my profile. So my area of specialty is property valuation, but I also practice in all relevant specialty area of the real estate profession. Our conversation today is price dynamics in the Lagos property market. This is not to say that if you are in any other market in in any other sub market in the Nigerian real estate market, this doesn't mean that the conversation we'll be having here is not relevant to what you're doing. I think you should relax and also listen, because what we're trying to do with this conversation is to explain patterns and also to be able to recognize pattern, so that when that pattern is playing out in your market, you'll be able to recognize it and also follow through. Because real estate are always in circles. Real estate markets moves in circles. So when you get to know where you are in the circle, you know how to better prepare for what's about to unfold. Yeah, that's the way it is. So price dynamics in the Lagos property market. Don't forget, if you're listening to this, we'll be having a deep dive later on in the evening. More like it's an Instagram live, which will be happening later on today in the evening, 8:30. Just in case you're listening to this in the future, you can just search for the deep dive on this particular topic. I don't know if it's something I'll continue doing for each episode, but let's see how things unfold as we go on. This is not a beginner's class. Just in case this is the first audio you ever to have come across with regards to real estate market. Um, because if I start doing a crash course on what real estate is and what real estate is not, on how to start, on how to get to and how to acquire your first property in the real estate market, this audio might get too long for the purpose of what we are trying to achieve this morning. But for benefit of some persons, so real estate is literally a layman term: land, building, or any other immovable object fixed or attached to land. So that's the layman definition of real estate. And then there's what is called title, or there's what we call real property. Um, this is obviously not is beyond the scope of our work today, but barristers and lawyers are people who are conversant with the term. So real estate is the brick and mortar, while real property is the interest in that brick and mortar. What do I mean by interest? Freehold, leasehold. Like based on the Land Use Act in Nigeria, every person who owns land own leasehold interest in the property. So it means you have a 99 years period to use that property, and then later on it reverses back to the government, because the governor holds that land in trust for the people. So that is why the government can compulsorily acquire your land for overriding public use. Like I said, this is beyond the scope of what we are discussing this evening. During the course of promoting this podcast, I released a picture quote, and it will form the basis of what we are discussing today. Real estate analysis should always begin with two fundamentals. Let me go back and reiterate. We are trying to recognize patterns. We are trying to see patterns so that when those patterns appear in the future, we'll be able to tell and we'll be able to position properly. So real estate analysis, when you're analyzing a real estate market, when you're analyzing a piece of property in a sub-market, when we say sub-market, real estate is highly segmented and highly heterogeneous. No two properties are the same. But you can categorize properties within sub-markets. Like Lekki Phase 1 is a sub-market. VI is a sub-market. The CMS area, Lagos Island, is a sub-market. So within a sub-market, you can compare properties, but you can't go outside the sub-market to start doing your comparisons. I don't know if you get during the deep dive. I will explain this more. So I would appreciate it if after you've listened to this, you also listen to the deep dive too. You also log in for the deep dive later on. So real estate analysis should always begin with two fundamentals. The first is the economic strength of the whole city and how well the property, and then the second is how well the property is connected or positioned to connect to the city's commercial heartbeat. How well a property is connected to the economic nerve of a city determines how valuable that property is and eventually will be. That is where infrastructure comes in. Infrastructure such as road or any other transport infrastructure. It shouldn't come as a wonder why Lagos ultimately became the economic nerve of Nigeria. With two ports, Apapa and Tinkan, with an international airport, an international terminal and a domestic terminal, and again, the first administrative hub of Nigeria, right from pre-independence, right from the colonial era. So Lagos has long been positioned to become Nigeria's economic nerve. So yeah, the capital had to be moved all the way to Abuja just to decongest Lagos. And despite that, the economic opportunities still remain. It was just a portion that was moved away, which is the administration. And if in the future we will be talking about the Abuja property market, I would say more on this. And let's continue with what we're talking about. That was some years ago. I said something about the Ibejuleki axis. I said Ekpe, Ijebuode, Ibejuleki proper. I'm trying to differentiate between the aspect of Ibejuleki with the deep sea port and the Dangote refinery. I'll call it the free zone area, free trade zone area, and then Ibejuleki. So Ibejuleki, Ekpe, and Ijebuode upwards to inwards to Ogun State will be to free zone area. These submarkets and neighborhoods will become one day to free zone area what Lekki Phase 1 became, what Lekki Phase 1 and VI became to Marina. So look at the pattern. Look at Phase 1. Look at how this places, look at how they serve Marina. So just look at the pattern. That is why I love what the government is doing in the free zone area now, because they are trying to avoid this area becoming like a papa. So they are doing a whole lot of roads, doing a whole lot of things, making sure that they get it right this time around, and ultimately it doesn't turn out to become a papa. The last time I visited Satellite Town, because if you look at the map of if you look at Google image, you see a whole lot of tank farms just behind Satellite Town. Then I understood why it was practically impossible for Satellite Town to have one road that is good and motorable, because it's just as if tankers just have to find a way to damage the road from continuous usage, because these are heavy duty vehicles, and the more they ply your road, the worse your road become. So that is why at the Dangote refinery axis, the free zone area, the government is doing everything possible. They are doing everything. Now, presently, the 7th Axia Road is being constructed to also connect the free zone area to Ekpe, Ikorodu, and the rest. So all of this is just to make sure that areas get connected to the economic knife. And the more this area become connected to these places, the higher their value goes up. In the evening, we should do a deep dive on the concentric zone theory. I think over time I'll get bored, or where so I will be able to teach better, because I over time I've seen that I'm more or less a teacher than a speaker. So I do a lot of illustrations when I teach. Let's talk about the economic strength of our host city, Lagos. Lagos drives over 70% of private property transaction. Lagos, which is literally the smallest state in Nigeria, drives over 70% of private property transactions. The Nigerian real estate market is now valued at over 41 trillion naira. Over 41 trillion naira. That's the valuation of the Nigerian real estate market. Now let's do a deep dive on Lagos generally. So Lagos is not just Nigeria's largest city. It is the engine room of the nation's economy. Estimated GDP was over 250 billion, purchasing power parity. So Lagos drives a substantial share of Nigeria's economic activities through finance, trade, real estate, manufacturing, technology, transportation, and entertainment. So, because it's a gateway to global commerce, so meaning you have to more like make it stop at Nigeria, at Lagos, when you're about coming to Nigeria. Most persons that land in Abuja International Airport do so because they are trying to avoid Lagos traffic stress. When you talk about corporate headquarters in Nigeria, Lagos, the number in Lagos outnumbers any other place. So Lagos functions as Nigeria's gateway to global commerce due to its ports, airport, corporate headquarters, and then the growing digital economy. COVID did something to the world that most persons are not talking about. COVID changed the way human beings will forever work and do business. Before people were skeptical about doing business with people they've not seen. Globalization came and did something. Globalization broke borders, broke walls. But still, we in Africa were still skeptical, despite there was no border no more. So we still felt we should see people we are doing business with before we hand over our cash to them. But then COVID did something. COVID brought trust, because we didn't have any other option when we were locked up in our house. and we still had to do business. My pastor, Pastor Poju, would say that before COVID-19, most leaders in church would be like, the people will really not accept online, more like online streaming. Most persons would want to see you. And he talked about how we talk, yeah, I'm just using this for teaching sake, for teaching purpose. He talked about how there's this certain member that always tracks him to any campus he's going to. Because what Pastor Poju does is he teaches live from one of the campuses, and then the other campus streams via the screen. So, but there's this particular brother that always follows him around. And then when COVID-19 happened, he couldn't follow Pastor around, so he had to stay in his house and watch Pastor from the screen. So after COVID, he now saw that there's really no need me following Pastor around. So that's what COVID-19 did to the psychology of humans. So we became more trusting because we had no other option. So after COVID, we had no issues than to embrace the digital economy. So people can work from home now. Several CEOs have accepted the fact that, yeah, you can work from your home. So I've already said it. Lagos GDP is at over $25 billion in purchasing power parity, making it Africa's second largest city economy after Cairo. So why does Lagos dominate Nigeria's economy? Headquarters of major Nigerian banks and corporations are situated in Lagos. Largest concentration of industries and SMEs, Lagos. Busiest ports in Nigeria, Lagos. Strong real estate and construction market, Lagos. Largest consumer market in the country, Lagos. Technology and startup hub of West Africa, Lagos. Major entertainment and media center, Lagos. So all of these things I've mentioned attracts people. The last time I checked, the population in Lagos was over 20 million. We have over 20 million persons in Lagos. And these are people that will require a place to stay. According to Maslow's hierarchy of need, shelter is one of those important ones. These are the strategic sectors powering Lagos. We have finance and banking. We have trade and maritime activities, real estate and urban development, technology and innovation, Flutterwave, Paystack, OPay, MoneyPoint. All of this attracts a large youthful population. There was a time I did growth drivers in the Nigerian real estate market, and we talked about urbanization and we talked about population as growth drivers. So the economy pulls in. So it's more like a vicious, let me not call it, it's more like a circle. The economy grows, it attracts people. People spend, the economy grows. The economy grows, it attracts people. People spend, the economy grows. And it continues like that. So some challenges facing Lagos economy, which is obviously, so we have traffic congestion, housing deficit. Yeah, it's a challenge and also an opportunity for those who want to come into Lagos real estate market. Over 20 million housing deficit in Nigeria as a whole. And we have not much persons trying to fill up this deficit. So that's Lagos for you. Before I go into the next thing I want to talk about, I would like to let you know what formed my decision to do a podcast around this. So I was going through my laptop and I saw two documents of a project we did in June of 2020. That was just slightly after the COVID-19. That is the COVID-19 lockdown. And I saw prices in certain Lagos submarkets then, and then I compared it to what we have now. When I mention a place, I would want you to Google that place now to understand the difference between then and now. Pinnock Beach 2020 was selling for between 140 160,000. Nikon Town was selling for around 240 to 280,000. Periwinkle was 180 200,000. Orange Island was 150,000 per square meter. Carlton Gate Estate was selling for 160 170,000 per square meter. Parkview Estate was selling for 100 to 105,000 per square meter. Then our almighty Chevy V Estate was selling for between 70 to 90,000 per square meter. This is barely 6 years ago. In Nikon Town, a family house, because that's the only thing I permitted in Nikon Town, was selling for 280 million naira. And the rent then was about 7.5 million naira for a family house. Now, a family house, a 5-6 bed family house in Nikon Town sells for over 1.2 billion naira. So this same house selling for this price in 2020 is now over 1 billion naira. This is over 400% increment, over 400% growth rate we're talking about here. Yeah, some persons will argue naira lost value. Yeah, but at least it's a worthy hedge against any inflation you want to reason about. Real estate is a hedge against inflation. It's a hedge against economic downturn. So which other alternative could have offered this? Let me give another one. Ikate, land value in Ikate then was about 120 to 140,000 per square meter. Now land value in Ikate is about 450, 550,000 per square meter. As we speak now, it is crazily going up. It's going to grow more than this. I was telling people I have the image of this side of Lagos State before the Lekki Kogi link bridge was built. That brings me to the next thing I want to talk about. So what has been driving the Lagos real estate market? So I've talked about the economic base. Obviously, the population is driving it, but still, some persons will be like, that doesn't really say anything. So demand for properties in Ikoyi and Victoria Island is currently driven by a combination of extreme scarcity in prime locations. The keyword there is prime location. There's scarcity in prime location. There's also strong demand for high yield, safe haven for capital against currency devaluation. Does real estate answer this question? Based on what I just shared, is real estate really a safe haven for your capital? So what are the key drivers? So we have the need for safe havens for capital against inflation. That's number one. So we have diaspora demand. A significant portion of buyers are Nigerians in the diaspora, so seeking secure high yield investments that provide dollar dominated returns. So because most of these guys are going to finally repatriate their money in dollars, so they are looking for spots that would serve as safe haven and also that would also offer capital appreciation. And based on what I've said, a 450% over a period of 6 years is actually a good one. It's a good one. We're talking about almost 70-80% per annum. The second one is scarcity. And don't forget, everything we're talking about, Ikoyi, and Victoria Island spills over to other submarkets because these spots are closer to the nerve. And in fact, they are the nerve or the heartbeat of Lagos State economy. So every other thing, it more or less spill over. Those who can afford this highbrow status area will then move over to Lekki Phase 1. Similarly, those who can afford Lekki Phase 1 moves over to the next submarkets. That's how the spillover effect now spreads across all the way. And same thing will happen with also the free zone area. People who can't pay for the free zone area will have to spill over into other neighborhoods around this free zone area so that they can easily access the free zone area. So the next driver is infrastructure and accessibility. More like I said, people are looking for how easy to access the economic nerve. So that is why they try to position along these places to avoid the gridlock and every other thing while commuting to and from work. I think I've done justice to the matter, and I wouldn't want to speak beyond this. So join me for the deep dive. The deep dive may be more like a part 2 to this, And also, I think I should be able to break things down better in the deep dive, so that more persons will be able to understand what the real estate market is with the deep dive. I would encourage you to listen to this through and through again, so that when you start listening to the deep dive, it will be easy for us to connect and understand ourselves better. Like I said, this is not an introduction to real estate. This is me trying to explain to you what has been happening in the real estate market and why we're experiencing the growth we're experiencing in the Lagos real estate market. If you want to go and listen to my other podcasts, they are still available. I think I have them on Seller and also on all my podcast platform. Before I said I was going to delete them, but on a second thought, they are my intellectual property. I'll be leaving them there. I think the last podcast I did was more of a crash course on real estate. You could go listen to that. I think if yeah, that will help a bit. Yeah, you should listen to that. If you're a first time investor in the real estate market or a beginner in the real estate market and you don't know where to start from. So this is where we'll cut the curtain. I mean, this is where we we end today. See you at the deep dive. Thank you very much. And I appreciate your investment of time to listen to what I have to say. Same time next week, we'll be dropping episodes 2. Thank you.